We now move into our next session for the day, a leaders dialogue on the topic intelligent platforms and democratization of data engineering. With businesses becoming more data driven, building autonomous and intelligent platforms will help them move ahead with optimal efficiency. With the increasing need to do more with data to meet customer demands and beat competition, companies need to move to platform approach that will enable them to create more value for the business without the heavy lifting of traditional data pipelines. Our speakers are Dr. Gal Berkuz, Vice President, Data Monetization and Venture Acceleration, ZF Group, a 40 billion US dollar global automotive supplier. He's responsible for delivering revenues from data generated from ZF products and systems and supervising ZF subsidiaries in digital and connectivity. Joining him is Amit S. Fadnis, GE Officer, Chief Digital Officer, GE Healthcare. He's responsible for leading the company's digital and AI strategy and business. Amit oversees GE Healthcare's complete digital portfolio, including enterprise imaging solutions, clinical command centers, and consulting solutions. Moderating this session is Craig McNeil, President and Global Business Head, High-Tech Vertical, Quest Global. Craig has over 2 decades of industry experience that spans entrepreneurship, management, and technology. He's passionate about helping companies innovate and digitally transform their products and services to become the disruptors of their industries. Craig has earned recognition by Gartner, Forrester, and HFS as a leader in IoT Industry 4.0 and innovation. A pleasure to have you all join us this afternoon. Over to you, Craig.
Okay, well, thanks, Justin, for the introduction. And welcome to our discussion on intelligent platforms and democratization of data engineering. I'm Craig McNeil, representing Quest as the head of Quest High-Tech Global Business. And I'm joined today by Dr. Gal Berkuz, who's the Vice President of Data Monetization and Venture Acceleration at ZF Group, as well as Amit Fadnis, who's the Chief Digital Officer at GE Healthcare. Welcome, Amit and Dr. Berkuz, as well as our remote audience. Well, this is definitely an exciting topic. And so to set the stage for our discussion today, I wanted to review the published description of the panel. Now, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph and bore everybody, but I wanted to tease out a couple of important points. So the first is the topic that we're discussing today has a notion of intelligent platforms helping companies optimize efficiency. The second point is that intelligent platforms also help companies use data better to meet customer needs, and therefore they become more competitive. And then the last one, and probably one of the more exciting topics that we'll talk about, is the whole concept around data democratization. And the notion here is that data democratization will reduce the heavy lifting that is typically seen with traditional data pipes. So before we get into a few questions on these great topics, I wanted to let our panelists introduce themselves really quickly. Amit, can we start with you?
Yes, Greg, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Look, my name is Amit Fadnis, as Craig said. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for GE Healthcare. You know, people always wonder, what do Chief Digital Officers do? So let me explain quickly what my role is. I basically have a vertical and an horizontal role. So I run a P&L, digital applications in a digital business. And then I run, what we call the Edison platform, which is really an horizontal initiative across GE Healthcare, right? So we created the platform. We'll talk more about that, going forward. But essentially we are enabling, a lot of data analytics and AI-based workflow solutions, as well as creating ecosystems in healthcare with the platform. So that's really my role in brief here. I've been in healthcare for about 5 years. I joined GE Healthcare 5 years back. Before that, I was, in the technology industry, telecommunications and networking. Worked for 15 years for Cisco, and before that in the telecom space. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Gal, can we have you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Gal Berkuz. I'm the Vice President of Data Monetization and Venture Acceleration for the ZF Group. And let me explain a little bit what that means. So data monetization, when you look at all our vehicle systems, they generate data, and that data is very valuable. So I'm responsible for making sure that our divisions have in place what is required to make money on that data. And venture acceleration is what we've concluded is the way for us to be successful is to act like startups. So we have what we call a venture accelerator, where we have these essentially in-house startups that are creating these digital and data-driven products.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thanks so much for the introduction, Amit and Gal. So let's dig into some questions on this topic now. Amit, maybe if I could start with you. I wanted to just ask, in sort of the role that you have, and I would imagine certainly you have experience around Edison, but are you seeing examples of intelligent platforms yielding better efficiency and enabling, companies to better address customer needs? And can you give us an example or two? And we're trying to keep our answers to, let's say, 2 minutes, and then we'll do the same thing with Gal.
Sure, thank you. Actually, yes, I would say in short, absolutely, and specifically in healthcare, right? There's a significant role that the platforms can play. Look, healthcare has many challenges, and one of the challenges in healthcare right now is that there are a lot of devices. There's a lot of technology that is going into healthcare. Many times we find that these devices are not necessarily connected together. Okay. The result of that is, you have a tremendous amount of information that is being produced or data that is being produced. In fact, healthcare probably is the largest producer of data worldwide among all of the verticals. And I'll let Gal sort of challenge that from a car industry perspective in general. But the big challenge with respect to data and where the platform plays a role is that data is very siloed today in healthcare. And essentially what happens as a result of that is your applications that get constructed on top of that then tend to get siloed, and the workflows get fragmented, right? So a very important role that the platform plays is to sort of bring all of this together, right? Can we connect all of the devices? Can we ingest all information into one place? Can we aggregate that as a 360 record of the patient, right? And then the platform has to then be able to provide tools so that we can actually process that information and construct workflows which can fit seamlessly into clinical workflows. Because one of the issues with healthcare is if you don't integrate into the existing clinical workflows, any solution is almost completely useless, right? So that's the role that the platform plays. There is a massive need in the market because of the challenges that I talked about, apart from virtualization distribution of healthcare, which care delivery models that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Amit. Gal, what are you seeing around intelligent platforms? Are you seeing your customers use them to be more competitive as well?
I think that in the automotive market, we've seen a tremendous investment in platforms. I think we've seen a lot of belief of the ability of platforms to generate business and revenue and profit. And I think that where we are in automotive today is somewhat of a reckoning. And I think companies are trying to rationalize how do we actually make money off these tremendous investments. And I think that there's been a lot of data aggregation plays, but really what we're focusing on is data monetization, which is how do you actually make money on these data assets that you have, recognizing the complexity in the automotive industry that data assets are distributed and of vast scale. So I think it's really in the automotive industry, it's early days for actually making money, using these platforms.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. And Gal, maybe sticking with you for sort of the second question here, if I just think about how our audience is looking at this, I would imagine many of them are, off endeavoring to, create platforms, or that they're in the middle of something. Maybe they're, a couple of years into execution. But in your experience, what advice would you have for the audience in terms of what do you have to get right? Like, what's the one thing or maybe a couple of things that you have to get right with intelligent platforms?
Well, I think that what you really, from my point of view, is you really want to understand what's the intrinsic value of your data, and then how do you curate it in such a way that you have maximal flexibility and opportunity for the future. And that's, I would say, that requires a really good collaboration between the data teams and the business teams, and forward-facing strategies, because that's really the key to success, is making sure that the investments you're making today under conditions of uncertainty will be useful for you in the future.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thanks, Gul. Amit, can I throw the same question at you? In terms of, what should you get right, in terms of building a intelligent platform?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Look, first and foremost, I think we need to be very clear about what problem we are trying to solve. Okay, because when you say platform, it has a very broad, applicability. But not every platform is targeted to solve, different types or every type of problem, even within a given sector. Okay, so even within healthcare, there are multitudes of issues and multitudes of problems that you can go after, and you need to be very clear about what is it that you're trying to solve for. I'll give you a couple of examples, right? You can create a platform for creating digital twins of devices. You can create a platform for asset performance management, right? You can create platform for serviceability of the devices and so on and so forth, right? Or you can create platform for optimizing clinical workflows and clinical decision support systems. Now, the nature of the problem that you're solving is extremely critical, because that defines the persona of the platform and what services that you create. So I think that's the very first thing that we need to do, because I see people getting excited about platform, but they sort of broad base it, right, to a significant extent, and then sort of lose the focus on what is it that the platform is actually trying to solve for. The second thing I would say is that, look, obviously in any type of a persona of a platform, right, irrespective of the type of problem that you're trying to solve, data is going to be absolutely critical, right? And the platform needs to be able to not only ingest information or data, but has to be able to curate it, right? And curate it in a way that is then interoperable and usable to really solve the problem that you're trying to solve for, right? So I think that's the second piece that is important from a platforming perspective. The third thing I would say is that once you decide what problem you're trying to solve for, right, and the data that is relevant for that particular problem, the platform needs to then be able to provide building blocks or services that allow you to actually get insights from the data or process that information and put them in workflows. Now, these services really is what the persona of the platform is. Every platform has compute and memory and maybe some cloud artifacts and cybersecurity, connectivity. That doesn't define the persona of the platform. The real persona of the platform is defined by what services you provide to process the data that you ingested and aggregated, right? And that's what truly differentiates you. Now, to do that, obviously, you have to open up the platform if possible so that you can create an ecosystem, right? Because not every service can be built by a single company. But I think it's very important to sort of strategize upfront as to how you're going to build these service sets on the platform, what you're going to buy, what you're going to build, what you're going to partner with a larger ecosystem to actually create that, those services on the platform itself. But those are some of the things, that are really critical, and you need to get it right if the platform has to succeed.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, in hearing some pretty similar answers, which is great, because that shows us that regardless of the industry, you're serving the automotive and the healthcare industry. there's some similarities in what it takes to get it right. And what I heard, resonate, and I'm sure our audience does as well, is really understanding what your data is, how to ingest it, how to curate that. Amit, I love what you said, and I'll put maybe words in your mouth, but don't boil the ocean. Keep it narrow, keep it focused. And I think we've all seen, there's a digital graveyard full of companies that have tried to do too much in a platform, and that makes a lot of sense to keep it focused. But I like that, and I also like the building blocks. I think that's great advice for our audience. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Craig, but maybe I'll make a comment. I want to sort of reinforce what Gal said. Look, I've been in the platforming space for a very long period of time. And I'll tell you that, if you're not careful and if you don't sort of strategize in a way that you can monetize the platform of the data in the first 3 years of, you sort of conceptualizing the platform, you're really risking it, right? Because what I've seen typically is people get very excited, companies get very excited about platforming. But if you don't, create the platform in a way that you can actually take it to market fairly quickly, your CFO is going to lose patience on it 24 months down the line, okay? And it becomes a much harder conversation after that if you haven't sort of strategized it up front, because you already lost 24 months. The company very quickly loses patience on how much platforming are we going to do before I see any monetization. So I just wanted to reinforce that point. I think Gal sort of mentioned it, but it's very important.
Yeah, no, and I missed that in my recap, but really, really good point by both of you. And we all know how this works. Nothing gets done without without the CFO being on board. So keeping them close as you develop and pursue your platform endeavors is key. And obviously having success for them is a key thing as well. So this has been a great discussion on intelligent platforms. Not that we're leading it, but I did want to touch on the data democratization topic as well. And I think a lot of our audience has probably been around the business of platforms for at least a few years. I think data democratization, or at least the way the industries are characterizing that today, is a little bit newer. So before we kind of venture into some questions there, I thought I'd get a bit of a definition of this from each of you. So Gal, maybe could you give us your definition of data democratization? And then Amit, we'll do the same with you, and then I'll get into some more questions there.
Yeah, so data democratization, that term's been around for, at least 6-7 years that I remember. It really is an IT term, okay? And it's really about making it easy for people in the enterprise to access the data, okay? And I think that it goes together. Data democratization is really an evolution of the term self-serve that we used to use a lot. And I think that the way we look at it at ZF, we want to build exciting externally facing data and digital businesses, okay? And the term data democratization really, I would say, applies a lot to internal use of the data, like accelerating BI, maybe accelerating preparing data sets for ML or things like that. So I think that we're really looking at data productization. How do we create data products that we can ultimately sell business solutions, based on them? I think that of course, if you're an IT shop, you want to reduce the cost of accessing the data that you've aggregated. And that's really what data democratization is all about. And it's really, really valuable. But I would say that data democratization and data monetization are really two different conversations from our perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, I'll come back to that in a minute. But let's hear Amit, your background here and just your definition of the subject.
No, I think, Gal sort of said this right. I mean, he said it very well, I would say. It's very similar in healthcare, right? With a little bit of an added complexity, because, in healthcare, as I said earlier, right, there are significant issues with respect to data interoperability, right? So if you want to democratize, right? And I guess from a definition perspective, it's all about if you've produced some information, some data for a particular patient in one particular location, can you actually make use of that information effectively, right? And democratically, right? So can I use multiple data sets to really extract out the knowledge base and the insights, then which can be then applied, towards specific solutions targeted towards therapies or towards diagnosis and so on and so forth. Okay. So it goes into basically making the knowledge base as captured in the data really available, from an insights perspective that can then be further used to construct, either therapies or clinical pathways, right? And that's all about, what democratization means, right, as far as healthcare is concerned. There are many issues, right, that need to be handled. I mean, there is data privacy, there is interoperability standards and the lack of them. And then, you can democratize the data or the information at different levels of processing, starting with very raw data, going all the way into insights and AI models and things like that, even. But it's a whole spectrum that comes into play when you talk about democratizing data itself.
Yeah, no, thanks, Amit. Well, so I want to ask another question, but before I go there, so I certainly recognize, and I would imagine our audience does as well, sort of the origins of the definition. And Gal, I think you sized it up perfectly, sort of from an IT perspective within a company. I do think the term is being used broader today, to where certainly we can consider it inside the company, and I also see this, Amit, in some of the healthcare areas. And perhaps the world is just using the term, inappropriately, but the being able to share, let's say, patient data between systems that may not be GE healthcare systems has been referred to as some sort of democratization of data. And so I'm interested to understand, and maybe this comes into the automotive industry too, Gal, is, are there ultimately going to be data and privacy concerns around this? Now, I can speak to a little bit of the healthcare, and Amit, I really want you to be the resident expert here, but just understanding how data moves, or quite frankly doesn't move between electronic medical records, systems today. You could imagine that if that was freed up and there was more democratization of that data, then healthcare could be improved, quality of care could be improved. There'd be a lot of efficiency in the systems. I don't know if such a thing exists in the automotive industry. I would imagine there might be opportunity for that, but sort of giving that landscape. And Amit, maybe I'll start with you. Do you see regulatory and privacy issues that exist today or could exist in the future?
Yes. So, if you don't mind, Craig, let me step back a little bit and try to, first of all, say, what is it that we are trying to do, right? What's the problem that healthcare is trying to solve? And it's a very interesting area because today, the way a patient gets treated is that there is an interaction between a patient and a physician. And essentially, is the play between the condition of the patient and the experience of the physician, right? What we are missing today is that the institution to which the physician belongs has maybe 10,000 times or 1,000,000 times more information that can be crammed, that can possibly be crammed into a one physician site, right? And it's that institutional knowledge that we are missing in the interaction between the physician and the patient. Mm-hmm. Okay. So essentially, what we're trying to do, what we're saying is that, look, there is a tremendous amount of information that is available about patients who are similar to this patient who is now sitting in front of the physician, who have been diagnosed, who have been treated, for whom the data is already available somewhere or the other in the systems. And can we pull together all of that institutional information process it, and make it applicable at the time of interaction between a physician and a patient, almost in real time, right? So that's the problem that we're trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
The other thing
And
is we are trying to obviously use that information.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to give a quick time check. I think we have about a minute and a half left.
Sure. So I'll basically say that the biggest issue as far as democratization is concerned is interoperability of data sets. And you rightly said there are standards, but those standards are non-standards at this point in time, right? Because there's just too much of variation between the way the systems are implemented. And I think the governments are trying to open it up and the industry is trying to open it up. But as that happens, it will go a long way in democratizing information, so that can be used to what I said, to solve those problems.
Yeah, no, well, that's great. And thanks for the perspective there. I think that's helpful for the audience. Gal, in just the last 30 seconds or so, is there any correlate to that in the automotive industry? Any need to trade information like that?
Yeah, I think the principle that applies, I would say, both to healthcare and to automotive and to any business is there's a natural tension or conflict between the people that haven't owned the data and get an economic advantage out of it, and the people that generate the data. And when you look at Europe, there's definitely they're trying to regulatory force it, such that there's more ownership of the data by the individual. We see in the US, it's owned by the corporations, like you wouldn't think that, Google and Apple will, share data for the benefit of this or that individual, right? So I think it's, yeah, I don't really see like a stable state, where there's like a solution like that, where everything's interoperable or not. I think we'll just see a little bit of both, because that's how many companies make their money, is off the data, and the last thing they want is to share it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I know we're out of time, but I really appreciate your time, Gal and Amit. I'm sure the audience does as well, but this has been good. And Justin, we'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Craig, Amit, and Dr. Gal for that brilliant discussion. Our next session for the day, ladies and gentlemen, is a leaders' discussion on the topic Embedded Systems for Data-Driven Decision-Making, Smart Supply Chain Advantage.